next presentation, I would like to call upon stage Sai Kiran Shetty. May I request Mr. Sai Kiran Shetty, National Sales and Marketing Manager, Tape Solutions, Saint Gobain. The topic of the presentation is maximizing EV battery performance with innovative protection solutions. The stage is all yours, sir. Thank you so much.
So good afternoon, everyone. I think my fellow speaker took us in quite detailed presentation. So I've tried to keep this presentation quite crisp so that I engage you in person in our booth. So it's just a teaser of what Saint Gobain is trying to do in the EV space. So before I dwell into the topic maximizing EV battery, I think most of you would typically have a kind of back in your mind what Saint Gobain has to do in the EV battery when we are so known for glass, right? So glass is part of our business, but it's about 10 to 15% in our total revenue. So there is also a high performance solution vertical being part of Saint Gobain, which is mostly into performance plastics and so many engineering components related activities which we do. Today I'll take you through the interesting topic that's basically about how do we maximize the overall performance and as well as safety when we design EV battery for countries like India. So before dwelling in, I think why it's so important to speak about this topic is because if you see in India, I think we are in 2024 and I would not get into numbers because that's not my cup of tea. I think a lot of researchers are putting numbers there. It's just a number taken from one of those researchers and put in. But what it clearly indicates is that how we are adopting ourselves towards EV. We speak about, if you see in India, EV as an ecosystem, we speak about two-wheelers, we speak about three-wheelers, and we have passenger vehicles and then the commercials. But it's quite clearly evident that the two-wheelers and the three-wheelers are really taking quite a bit of adoption, wherein the passengers vehicle are a bit of lagging than what we anticipated. But this is a long way. We all have a very good hope that I think by 2030 or so, we would be in a pretty good shape. So, but what is important to do is that we as, I think, specialists in this particular market, put things together rightly along with the OEMs and to work together to kind of build that ecosystem. In this, if we speak, we also speak about infrastructure, what is the importance of building those infrastructures. Today, I think the larger issue is the anxiety over the range as well as on the safety. So this brings us into a situation where we really work with OEMs, try to understand their key requirements when they're building the battery and try to help them out in offering certain solutions which can make it viable in terms of cost as well as on the safety perspective, right? There's some indication about how we see the technology is moving towards. Like for example, in India, we could possibly debate, but then if you see the numbers, we see larger, if you see the two-wheelers are towards the cylindrical NMC sort of a chemistry, wherein if you see three-wheelers and the four-wheelers, largely they are moving towards the prismatic LFP chemistry. So with all this keeping in mind, I think I'll take you through how one can really build the battery pack safer and then also and performance oriented. I'll touch upon few aspects which is important as a designer once they start doing into it. So we think about 2-3 things here. One is cell swelling. If you speak about prismatic cells or the pouch-based cells, we all know that from the beginning of the life to the end of the life, the cells are going to expand, right? How do we manage that in the design? Do we really keep certain consideration in place? Do we keep those initial loads and the end loads and to keep those in perspective? The second important thing is the thermal management. We all know that when you charge and discharge, and country like India, we know that, you can't have an idealistic situation and we tend to charge abruptly and all of those things can happen and which will only lead to generation of heat. So how do we really, build a battery efficiently to dissipate those heat which has been, kind of generated? And we all know that, either we overheat or if it goes down, then in both of the scenario, the battery would really get affected. Then we have thermal safety, the fire safety, which is thermal propagation. I think we all went into a lot of this news in the maybe last couple of years when typically two-wheelers were getting caught getting fires. So can we stop? Yes, definitely we can stop by using the right way of doing things and incorporating right design into perspective. And that's where I think we can work together. I'll dwell into these topics very crisply in the coming slides. And there are certain more things which we do, like, there are a lot of components which comes into the battery pack when you're putting this together. How do you use right material? And, I mean, these are all mobility parts, right? A lot of vibrations and stuff which is going through. So you need to use materials which can really absorb those and as well as conduct at times. So that's more of it. Now, taking you into detail, so I spoke about cell swelling. So why cell swelling? Why it's so important, or rather, why should we be really bothered about? So there are certain, study which has been put across. If you, when you design your cells or a battery, if you don't keep any material between, that means you don't put any load or, on the cells, how the cell behaves over the period, the life of the battery comes down, or rather you put more amount of a load than expected. In either of the cases, it is going to be deteriorate. So it makes a lot of sense for designers to work possibly 2-3 years quite in advance to really understand what is expected out of the battery and try to work with certain, people, could be us and could be any few more guys who are really into this kind of zones, and, bring a solution in perspective. And then if you see here, this material does handle, the cell expansion or contraction characteristics, but, beyond that, when you have a base cells coming in contact, it's a pure possibility that there is an electrical, shock, or else the vibrations could happen. With overall this, there were larger chances of thermal safety issues or fire propagation issues, or the overall battery life would come down. So that's the reason why we really need to consider certain materials which can really absorb those, pressures as the cell expands or contract. Coming into, the fire propagation or fire safety, I think this chart here speaks about, and this coming from IDTech, so basically speaks about at a global footprint, how many of the vehicles were called back for the reason of compromising on the fire safety, and that's much more on the reputation and the cost. So, it's good that we were able to call back, but then something happening on the field when the passenger is on the vehicle, it's pretty fatal, right? So, there is an opportunity for us to design the battery using right material and to ensure that the thermal propagation or the fire propagation can be mitigated at certain level, possibly at a pack level, at a cell level, or at a module level. So that's something which we work with the OEMs. And we have today a variety of solutions purely based on the design requirements, starting from the very, we speak about LFP and NMC. Both of them comes with a different scenario. LFP typically in the event of thermal or fire propagation, it could be about 600 degree, and in the case of NMC, it could be about 1200. So we do work with the OEMs to try and mitigate this with offering them certain customized solutions. We spoke about managing the thermal within the battery, because as we went through a slide before, if the heat within the battery, if it goes beyond certain limit, it's again deteriorating for the cell performance over the period of a time. Or rather, if you don't maintain certain temperature within the battery, even in that case, the cell would not really ideally perform. So what it makes is that we really understand the behavior of the heat flow and to bring in certain component in between the cell and the module or the cooling plates to try and dissipate. So there are certain available options and then the solutions which helps us as the designers or the OEMs to try and infuse these materials in the right places to increase the conformability and then the surface area for contact, so that ultimately you could design a battery which could really give you a efficient thermal management. Lastly, I think this is one important, especially for me, I think I felt when I've been discussing with the OEMs for the last half a decade or so, in India, like, places, we see that our road conditions are serious conditions, and while flooding, a lot of cases, we see that water can really come into the car, right? And most of the cases, the battery packs are on the lower chassis. So if we really don't design our battery packs in an efficient sealing, so then this is, even though we use state-of-the-art electronics and all those stuff, if we compromise on the sealing aspect, then we really, give up a big time on the safety. beyond, even though we are using the fire safety material, but then if water leaks into the battery pack, then you really compromise on the overall performance. That's where we come closely and we work closely with the OEMs and the designers to give them the customized solution which could go across your battery pack and make sure for the life of the battery, those sealing member would really consistently perform even at a different conditions. Because in India we have conditions at at zero, at a higher elevated temperatures or so. So that's something which seems to be quite interesting, and I think the market is also accepting it pretty well. These are beyond this, key aspect which I spoke about. When we speak about battery, there are so many different components which comes in to fix those in place, and then to design them. We really need to use right materials. When I say right materials, a lot of adhesive options are available, but then it's important to use fire-rated materials and certain customized solutions based on the requirement. And that's where I think Saint-Gobain, with their overall experience, be coming to play and work closely with the market. So this is where, I spoke about challenges, but this is where we as a group come into play. Saint-Gobain, as a value chain, we play across at an EV, system. So basically, we start from the very raw material section. We have a different business verticals, offering different solutions here. So we have ceramic business, which really works closely with the raw material manufacturer, which goes into lithium-ion batteries. Then we have offering to the people who makes anode, cathode, and the separators. Even at the cell, battery cell manufacturing, a lot of material which goes into cell manufacturing, and that's where we come into play. And then here we spoke about, we are speaking about the module making, and that's where the tape solution business vertical of Saint-Gobain really concentrates, where it comes in close hands with the key elements such as cells and all of those, which enhances the performance and then also ensures that the battery is safer over the period of time. This is about our global presence. We are Saint-Gobain being a global multinational. We have been having our manufacturing capabilities across the world at different places. Most importantly, in India, we have 2 locations in Mumbai and Bangalore, and this is helping us to be near to our local OEMs, work closely with them, understand the challenges, curate the products as they needed to them, and that's where we are able to make a difference. Thank you for being patient and listening to me, and if you have any queries, please feel free to drop by our booth in B08 in the hall number 1. Thanks a lot.